All right, what is up, y'all? Will here with Schedulefly, and this is the Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast, sponsored by us here at Schedulefly. Super simple web-based restaurant employee scheduling software backed by legendary customer service. My personal cell phone is on the website on 3 pages, y'all. We take great care of our customers, and we also provide scheduling at a low price point. We have never raised our prices in 18 years in business, as of May 1st, 2007 to today. Same price point. So simple software, great service, low price point. If you are on pencil and paper or Excel and scheduling has become a headache, we've got some good aspirin for you. If it's working, keep doing what you're doing. We don't try to sell to anybody that doesn't need a solution. But if you have problems, check us out. 30-day free trial, schedulefly.com. Again, my personal cell's on there. Call me, text me. I carry a flip phone, but I do get text. So give us a shot. If you're on another scheduling software, 7Shifts, Hot Schedules, Sling, R365, you name it, it's harder to use than it needs to be. And love those guys, but they're all backed by venture capital, private equity, so it's expensive and they keep raising the prices. So if you're not in love with what you're doing there, again, schedulefly.com, 30-day free trial anytime. All right, enough of that. Let's talk about Restaurant Owners Uncorked, because we're nearing, and this might be it, our 600th episode in 15 years of doing podcasts. And we have the luxury today of having a very special guest who is doing some freaking incredible work. She's been on here before, back again. Lots has happened since we were on here the last time. Super busy lady, so we're lucky to have her. Molly, good morning, and introduce yourself real quick if you would.
Hi, my name's Molly Engelhart, and I'm probably most at this point well known for being a vegan chef in Los Angeles with 5 restaurants that went from that to a cattle rancher in Texas with the on-farm restaurant right on the ranch, where you can look out and see the cow or the pig and eat the bacon right there from where you are. And how does someone go from a vegan chef in Los Angeles to uh, raising animals in Texas for consumption? That's the question. That's the $1 million question. Bureaucracy, I would say. California's impossibility, 2.5 years of no indoor dining. But there was a lot of things that contributed to that.
And you have a book coming out.
Yes, called Debunked by Nature. And essentially it starts with how my brain got broke open around veganism. I mean, my mom was vegan when I was in the womb, so I was highly indoctrinated into the conversation and believed I was doing good work in the world. I wouldn't do anything that I didn't think was in alignment with God or the way we're supposed to do things. I'm a morally driven person, not I don't think anybody goes into restaurants or farming because they think it's the easiest way to make a living. So, I thought that I was doing right. And at some point, I think we talked about this in my first time I was on here, but at some point I realized that food waste, I was a good liberal environmentalist, vegan chef, and I realized that food waste was this huge epidemic of a problem, and nobody was talking about it because nobody's going to get rich off of telling us not to throw food waste in the trash like they will off of windmills or solar panels. So I found out and I thought, wow, I have these vegan restaurants and I think I'm doing all this good for the environment. And that's where my mind was at the time. But that I realized, I mean, I was just throwing away massive amounts of food waste between this prep scraps and then what people are throwing away on their plates. And people are pretty wasteful, though. I'm going to try 4 appetizers, blah, blah, blah. And so we just had like a lot of food waste. And so me and my husband eventually bought a farm in California first, so that I could manage the food waste. And we did a whole keeping the food in the loop. And when we did that, it was literally illegal for you to contract anybody to remove trash from your restaurants in California. Because the trash companies have like these monopolies in different urban areas. And by the time I left my restaurants in California, it was illegal to not compost. So I was like a little ahead of my time there. But in getting my own farm, essentially to compost my food scraps is what the reason was. And then obviously grow food for my restaurants. I just realized there was no vegan food. It was totally a lie. Like that growing broccoli required blood meal and bone meal and feather meal that was coming out of the consolidated feedlot system. And that just by cutting something off of your plate, saying I'm not going to eat XYZ, doesn't actually make a solution. It just puts pressure in a different area in an already broken system. And so in that realization, in my mind, breaking that there's no vegan food, that there's death on every plate, whether you're eating a steak or you're eating broccoli or avocado toast, there's still death on that plate. It really broke open my mind about a lot of other stuff. And so the book, Debunked by Nature, takes 19 constructs of modern society and brings them to the farm or nature and asks, do they make sense? And I basically assert that nature is conservative. And I don't mean like rah rah, Donald Trump, MAGA. I literally mean like cares for the family, puts reproduction first, puts food
Right.
and water first. There's like a God's design, and that we as mammals have kind of moved away from it. And the first crack in the armor, I mean, you got to get, I was married to an undocumented man that worked for me in the kitchen when we met. Had Mexican children. I lived in Los Angeles. I'm a vegan chef. I grew up in Ithaca, New York, the first town to ever outlaw gas stoves. Like I come from as liberal a liberal background as you could, but that vegan, like that crack in the armor just started to crack a lot of other things. And through farming and observing, I just started to realize that we weren't living right. And I'd go into the restaurant and I'd be interacting with these employees, and then I'd go back to the farm and I'd be observing. And I just realized that what we were taught to believe was so disconnected from our true design.
Mm, amen. Y'all, first of all, make sure to go listen to Molly's first episode because a lot, like we got into the background about her and her husband and that story, which is incredible. And we got into a lot of this, like where she began to realize what was going on. I find it fascinating, and I'm just proud of you for, and proud of anybody. I value this very much. People that um, learn to how to think, not what to think. I mean, we're often taught what to think.
Yes.
You grew up being taught a lot of what you're supposed to think. This is how it is, which is cool. We need that. But, you know, what we all try, I know you do, and I do, is try to instill into our kids. It's like, yes, get an education, work hard and do, but always learn. If your teachers are teaching you the right way, frankly, they're teaching you not this is the way, this is right, that's wrong, more these are ideas, go explore them and learn what you believe to be right. And there is a process that a lot of people go through when you start to question things and say, my emotionally, this is what I want to be right. I really want this because it's important to me. And it's hard. It's hard to strip out because we're not we're irrational, we're emotional, and we tend to post-rationalize. We decide this is what we want, and then we come up with reasons why that makes sense. And a lot of the stuff you're talking about and what you learned growing up, that's the case. But I want to I want to dive into this like a little bit granular, Molly, with some of the things you mentioned, because I think it's important. I don't think a lot of people, may understand this. Like when you talk about, I thought this was really insightful. You talk about death on a plate. So you mentioned bone meal for avocado, or I mean for broccoli, and you talked about avocado. I think about like how many bees it takes to pollinate, when you're making
Almonds.
almond milk and things like that. So give some of those like maybe
So,
2 or 3 like real world examples that people that haven't really dug into this that are
so
bought
when
that might want to know.
So me and my husband bought the farm, and it was fallow. There was nothing growing on it. They had ripped out an orange orchard. And so we're trying to see at this point, I have no concept that I'm going to shift my whole mind and not be vegan, or that they're going to shut us down for 2.5 years and COVID's going to do the damage it did. None of that. So I'm just like supply chain. Okay. I've now bought up supply chain. And what do we need? Avocados. We needed tons of avocados. It's a high value thing in the restaurant. Let's put in avocados. So we put in 1,500 avocado trees. I get different genetics, not just Haas, but so that I can have year-round avocados or pretty close to year-round avocados. And so we put in this avocado orchard, and all of a sudden the ground squirrels are just in the ground eating these fresh new baby roots of these baby trees. And so we're trapping ground squirrels. And I'm a vegan and I don't want any death on the farm. And so I find a neighbor that has falcons, and I'm like, okay, can you take these ground squirrels I'm trapping and I'll bring them to you live, and then your falcons can eat them? He's like, oh, yeah, sure. And then I start dropping off the squirrels, and he's like, yeah, I can use like 2 to 3 a day. Like, that's all. Falcons don't eat 40 ground squirrels. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do with the rest of this? Like, the nature was totally imbalanced on this land because there was nothing growing. It was fallow. It was being sprayed by Roundup. The ground squirrel population had been brought way up. There was no coyotes. There was no nothing to bring the ground squirrel population down because there was no cover for the coyotes. It was just fallow land, right? And so they had really just made a home out of this place, just so many ground squirrels. And so we were trapping thousands of ground squirrels and to save our avocado trees. And my husband is drowning them like in the trap, or sometimes they're just dying from the heat exposure before we can even get to the traps. And I'm devastated about this. Like, my relationship to animals is shifted, but at this time I felt it was a moral imperative that these ground squirrels' life went to and it was just blew my mind and then I started talking to other avocado. Yeah, after 3 or 4 years, you won't need to do it anymore. Just when they're young, you got to protect them. And it's just like, that's every avocado I've ever eaten had to kill massive amounts of ground squirrels. Like, we eat wheat or we eat beans or we eat rice. All those things are combine harvested, where foxes and rabbits and voles and moles and mice are getting ground up in the combine harvester. That
Yep.
would also be true for hay harvesting and any kind of mechanical harvesting, corn, whatever we're harvesting. And then you think about, what is organic fertilizer? Organic fertilizer is animal byproducts. It is blood meal, it is bone meal, it is feather meal, it is manure. Those are like essentially the fundamentals of organic. So this idea that there could be some food without death was totally broken open. And I realized that I had been living this lie. And vegans love to say, well, the majority of crop death comes from feeding the feedlot system and feeding agriculture. Well, yes, that is true, because the majority of combine harvested corn is fed to animals, but that doesn't make it any less thousands of animal per an acre for the wheat, the corn, beans, lentils that are fed to us. It just means that it's part of a broken system of the monoculture that we have, where cows are not eating grass anymore. We are just totally out of sync with the environment. And so when I realized it's actually about how the animal's treated, that's the answer. And I was trying to grow stuff without any animal inputs, and stuff wasn't growing. We were bringing all the compost from the restaurant, but it wasn't really like setting off until I got a cow and I could mix her manure into it. And there was other things. I'm breastfeeding my child, and I'm milking the cow because the baby only drank off of 2 nips. And then we're like dumping it out, or my uncle's drinking it. And then I'm feeding my kid Tetra packs of oat milk. And I'm thinking, why is my breast milk like the most perfect food God has ever created, and Una's is going to cause cancer? It doesn't even make sense. And so all these things just broke it all open.
Man, that's amazing. So, okay, so you're there on the farm in LA, and when did you, I knew we talked about this, but when did you buy the place in Texas? When did y'all move to Texas?
So in 2021, so let's back up a little bit. I was looking at before the pandemic, I was looking at Texas, I was looking at San Antonio, and I was looking at Austin, I was looking at Dallas because of the minimum wage and how I was just watching the restaurant industry in California. I was doing these massive numbers, 7, 9 million per a store, 5 million per store, and just barely making 8%, barely making 7%. And I was seeing that that margin was so thin that it was going to eventually end. The gravy train of California was going to end because of the desire to make minimum wage $20, which was like stated that it wasn't like a secret or anything. And so when you have to pay a server $20 plus they're walking with $250 in tips, or $18 by the time we closed. But that's a very hard model. And then so what it doesn't actually create better wages for people. It creates tablets that you order on, or one person at the counter. It creates a different environment of dining. And so I was looking at Texas already because I thought, this is prior to the transition, and my mindset is that veganism was still very much on the rise in Texas. It was still kind of new. The minimum wage was attractive. There was still a lot of agriculture, so I could do the farm to table thing. And so I was looking at Texas already. And then I got an offer on my restaurants for like between 25 and 31 million, depending on these different markers I had to hit. And I was like, jackpot, I'm retiring. I'm just going to be a mom and I'll do farming, and I'm not going to expand. And if they want to expand in Texas, then had to be with them for 5 years and do the menu and da da da. So we'll do that. And so I kind of paused because we're selling the restaurants, and I just focused on meeting these numbers that would push me closer to that 31 million. And then so we rock out of the box last quarter of 19. I have a baby last quarter of 19. And I'm like over the moon. Like, I'm going to sell these things. I'm going to be able to be a full-time mom. I mean, just like, and then I'm going to just put my focus into regenerative agriculture. And I don't even need to come out that I'm not a vegan. I don't need like this pressure that I was feeling on my chest, like that I was a lie. I didn't even have to do it. Someone else was going to take that vegan concept. It was going to be for the vegans, and I could do something, go on my own and do something else. I felt like I wouldn't be gagged. I was just like over the moon. And then Q1 of 2020, it looks like best numbers ever, like going to do 9 million something in Culver City, going to do 7 million in Echo Park, going to do 6 million in Pasadena, and we're going to open Agora Hills. And so I'm going to open Agora Hills in Q2. They're going to buy it, and they're going to just evaluate it at whatever I was into Agora Hills plus 10%. And I'm like, okay, I'm fine with that. Like, the investors will get 10% in a short period of time, and we'll just get out of here, right? And I'm getting $31 million. This is awesome. And then California shuts us down for 2.5 years. Now, I have to say that I did know right away that the mask was bullshit, that 6 feet, still social distancing, that I wasn't going to take the injection. I knew all of that because I come from a non-pharmaceutical family. I have my babies at home. I take echinacea when I get sick. I don't go to the Dollar General or whatever. So I knew that. That was like obvious to me. I wasn't going to be afraid. I trusted God. I trusted my body. All that was clear. But I have to say that I didn't know we would never go back to normal in California. I didn't know that like dining would never be the same. And so I just thought this was like a pause, and that I would be able to get this deal back, or some version of this deal back. And so I want to say that my decision making during that time was based on that. And in hindsight, I just should have taken all that PPP money and bought fucking Bitcoin and closed the fucking thing down.
Yeah, right.
Like, in hindsight, that's what I should have done. And instead, I like bonused all my employees for coming to work and risking their lives while their friends are jerking off to porn at home. Like, yeah, I did what I thought was right. So, and you know what? They didn't care. Like, literally, I bonused all my employees, all that PPP money. And in the end, it was like, I don't care about my employees. I was not vaccinated. We're calling OSHA because you're breastfeeding and you don't want to get the injection and you're putting my life at risk. Like, it didn't matter how much I tried to take care of everybody during that time. In the end, like I was the villain for not complying. But I, in 2021, was like, well, I'm not going to the restaurant every day with a tiny little baby strapped to me. I'm essentially running the restaurants mostly from home at this point. We have some contracts feeding people that are immunocompromised at home. The restaurants are kind of just limping along. Honestly, they're losing money, but there's this government money. So I'm not even, the truth was, and this is, I was asleep at the wheel. Like I wasn't even that concerned that the restaurants were losing money. It's like, it's the pandemic. It's just temporary. Stupid,
Yeah.
stupid, stupid, stupid. But that's where I'm honestly, that's what my mindset was in is like, it's just, we got to limp along here. Right. And I bought a place in Texas thinking we'd go back to normal. I'm going to open. I was looking at restaurant locations and I thought maybe I can open some restaurant. Texas is open. Maybe I can open some restaurants in Texas and give some longevity to California and then eventually pull out of California if I can't sell it. But that was like my mindset. So that was how I got to Texas. 2021, I start looking for a farm and restaurant locations, and I end up settling on this place. And we close escrow in January of 22.
Got it.
And so that's how I end up here. But I don't move here to almost 2024, just a few days before 2024 starts. Just
And
late
you're out,
December of
I
2020.
remember looking up your place. Remind me, I mean, you're not, you're kind of out.
Way out. It's
Yeah.
not where you would say, let's start a restaurant right here. This is a good location.
Yeah.
I
But
went
you're a
from
destination.
I went from Sunset Boulevard, like on Sunset Boulevard, like in the one Colorado building in uh Pasadena, like in these historical buildings and like massively A plus locations to uh a deep in the country location. But you can't pay for the views. Like you can't, there's just, you drive up, you're going to drive in and you drive down. It's like one whole mile once you get onto my property to get to the restaurant, like to give you an idea
That's
of.
awesome.
And
Yeah.
so you drive down and you can see these 5 fields with cows, holistic plan grazing. You can see where they were yesterday, where they're going to go tomorrow, is how it's working. We have a 16 passenger like safari vehicle and we do farm tours. You can make a reservation for that. And you know, it's it's order at the counter. I'm traumatized by labor. No, it's not fancy and it is fancy at the same time. Like you're going to order at the counter. It's like very rustic. It's in a barn that's been modified. It's a beautiful patio. You can go feed the animals some, pellets, and there's a playground for kids. There's a slack line for kids. And you could go on a farm tour. You could walk in the greenhouses and see the food growing. But you're also, yeah, gonna, and there's like fresh made cocktails with herbs from the farm and all of that, and you're going to order at the counter. Like it's a intersection of like something really special and or not. And that's mostly a function of we don't, it's crazy, like we don't know what the numbers are going to be day to day here. It could be, there could be a $5,000 swing in what a day looks like here. And so that's very, so by doing order at the counter, it's a way for us to mitigate against that. And maybe as we get more established, those swings go away and we're able to do table service, but that's what it is right now. But it's very special in that 100% of the protein is coming off the ranch. So it's, if you're having an egg, it's from our chickens. If you're having bacon, it's from, and then if we don't have bacon, it's like, oh no, there's only a sausage sandwich. And you can only get sausage with your, it is what it is. Like you're getting our meat and there's lamb chops and if there's no more lamb chops, there's no more lamb chops. It is our food from our ranch, and there's supplemental coffee and bananas and rice and things that we don't grow. But all of the protein and a large percentage of the vegetables and herbs are from here. Even our iced tea is all the herbs are grown here on the farm, and it's lemongrass, lemon verbena, and mint and olive leaf, all from the farm. Someone whoever's opening the bar goes out and picks those things right there in the greenhouses and boils it that morning and strains it out. And that is the farm tea that you can have sweetened or unsweetened, but that's the tea, So it's that level of in the hot sauce, I made the vinegar from scratch from our persimmons.
Love that.
So it's like next level from scratch. The hot sauce is fermented for 15 months, fermented jalapenos with our homemade fermented uh persimmons vinegar, which is also fermented for 18 months because it takes that long to get all the sugars out of persimmons are high in sugar, so it takes longer to make them into vinegar. So yeah, it's like that level of special, and you order at the counter. So it's kind of an ox. People are like, well, I don't, I get reviews like, I don't want to pay $23 for a meal and have to order at the counter. And I'm like, yeah, well, I got it.
Well, you're actually, it's really funny. I had a conversation yesterday. We already put this episode up. Drew Moore, he's in Carrboro, North Carolina, and he's in restaurants for like 33 years. But he opened a place called Autostrada Pizza and Panini, and he was inspired when he and his wife went a couple years ago over to Italy, and they had the road there, like Germany, it's called the Autobahn. In Italy, it's the Autostrada. I didn't know that. I didn't know where his name came from, but he was explaining that like when you get off the Autostrada at an exit in Italy, you're actually going to have like good food. It's not McDonald's or Burger King. It's high quality food. And of course, over there, they don't use glyphosate. They don't
I know
like,
you could eat their wheat
so
without getting
you can eat
sick.
their wheat without getting sick. And so they have really high quality food. And so he got inspired by that and brought this back. But we talked yesterday. It was a really good episode. I mean, he was talking about, and I want to ask you about this because this is your world. He's opening a chop house on like 17 acres in Hillsborough, North Carolina, which this is all near like Chapel Hill, where UNC is, right?
Yeah.
So, but they have like a lay. It's a very tiny version of what you're doing. They're not running cattle there, but they're bringing in. He's supplying his everything's gonna be from local farmers. And his goal is he's like, we're poisoning ourselves and, we shouldn't, but we are. So he's trying to, provide nourishment through organic and local and, pasture raised beef and, organic um, vegetables and everything else. He's the same thing. He's like, we're literally like just injecting ourselves or eating ourselves to death with poison. But his point was, while I was getting to this, is he talked about how expensive it is, and it costs a lot of money to have that kind of a meal, just like it costs a lot to eat at your place. But I would argue, hold the phone. Like the little bit more you're paying to eat that food pales in comparison to how much money you're saving by not poisoning your body, not giving yourself a higher risk of cancer or autoimmune disease or all the money you're going to spend into our medical system with doctors and surgeries and pills and like that stuff. It's like that big food sets you up to be sick, and the big pharma comes in, and they're not like sitting there in a closed door, like smoky room, like planning, but there are these incentives that are kind of there where if we can
I
kind
mean,
of
I don't
play
think they're in a
sick,
closed door like smoking, but they are actively covering up
yes.
the science that's coming out that's saying that. And like, so I just want to say a few things like out loud, just so we can be prior to 1912, there had only been one case of a heart attack in the medical journals. So I just want to like say that out loud. I want to say that type 2 diabetes also had only by the early 1900s had only been a few cases of it existing in the world. And we talk a lot about genetics. Like I have a friend who is, it's literally sad. Like him and his wife is a nutritionist, and he has type 2 diabetes, and they like it may be. I mean, their marriage is struggling right now because he's not willing to make the food changes that she feels like would make a difference. He's like, it's my genetics. It's my genetics. And I'm not trying to take sides on this fight, but what we don't look at is our epigenetics. And so, yes, we all can have these genes that may are inclined to this or that. But if we remember, Weston A. Price left Cleveland, Ohio in the early 1940s, I believe, and he went across the world and said, something is happening here in Cleveland, Ohio, where everybody's getting sick. And he was a dentist. And he said, I want to discover why everybody is getting sick all of a sudden. Because in the 1930s, 1940s, you could remember what it was like 1912, right? It was not so long ago, like we can remember the 80s, right? And
Yep.
so he was like, why is everybody getting sick? And what he discovered was that he went all around the world, from Alaska to Africa to South and Central America, and found that indigenous people eating their indigenous diet had perfect teeth. So he was a dentist.
Yep.
He was a dentist. And then they did tests. Well, do they have the gene for cancer? Do they have the genes for diabetes? And as it turns out, indigenous people almost all have the genes for diabetes. And that's why we're seeing such horrible outcomes when the Western diet gets brought into these cultures. And so
Yeah.
it's really the epigenetics of what we're feeding our body, what the microbiology is then telling our cells, and what the carburetors of our cells are actually doing with this information, with this food. And honestly, we're not eating food anymore. We're so far, the flour that we all eat, whether we're eating organic flour or not, they discovered in the early 1900s that if we take out all of the bran, the flour lasts much longer on the shelf. It doesn't go rancid. Well, this is okay, but then we're not getting any of the nutrients. People have been eating bread for thousands of years and fine, right? But when you take 100% of the bran out of the wheat, then we're not healthy. So then they fortified it with man-made nutrients, not the nutrients that came from God or nature. And even if you don't believe in God and you just believe in science, like, well, there's a scientific perfection, if you don't want to call it God's perfection, that we are made of the earth and we are meant to eat of the earth. And so, and that's how it has been for so long. And so, in that, Weston A. Price realized that almost all modern diseases are connected to our modern diet, largely refined sugars and refined flours. And that when you take those, when you eat the whole corn, when you eat the whole wheat, ground with a rock and whatever, it's a very different experience for your body. And then we've now, since 1996, started spraying glyphosate as a desiccant on our grains. And so all of that is together. And what I want to say is, yes, it's cost more money. And yes, but honestly, all food should cost more money. Farmers are the only profession in the entire United States that we expect 85% of them to work a full-time other job, to have the privilege of doing this other job that they probably have to mortgage their home every single year, or their equipment leverage every single year to do that. And we all work in a restaurant, and your employees are mad if they don't have their first 30 before 4 hours. In many states, if they don't have their first 4:30 before the fifth hour, you are going to be fined. That is the employee that is serving that food at the end user. But the farmer that is growing that food, whether it's Cisco's food or organic food, is likely working another job to have the privilege of working another 8 hours on the farm every day to feed you. And so we are highly disconnected from the cost of food. Many commodity crops have not raised their prices since 70s. So I'm impressed that your product has not raised its prices since its conception. That's awesome. But that's not realistic. I talk about this, and I just wrote an article I write for Epoch Times about cotton farmers in Texas right now are being pushed to the limit. And it's basically, it's a huge, it's like 14% of the agricultural income for Texas. It's a huge percentage. And the money has not changed since 1974, but every single input has. I was an orange farmer in California. I bought a ranch and I found the old records. This ranch that I had harvested in 23 and got paid $14,000 for 15 acres of oranges. This guy had gotten 17,800 for the same acreage, less pounds in the 70s. Like, we can't actually have food prices just going down and down and down. And we've lost 140,000 farms in the last 10 years. And so if we care about food, and even if you don't care about food, if we care about humanity at all, we actually need the system to be more fair for farmers, and it's not. And in order for it to be fair for farmers, we literally will have to pay more for food. And I don't like to say that because people get mad and don't want to hear that. But real food takes real
Well,
people to grow it.
yeah, but the funny thing is, if you pay more for the real food and you're eating good quality, real, whole, nutrient-dense food, you're not going to be as hungry as often as when you're eating this crap that just signals your body that you're hungry again and you need more. And then you have type 2 diabetes because if you're predisposed for it and your epigenetics have led you to actually have it. It's like walking into a room, there's a light switch and there's a light in there. But if you don't turn the light switch on, the light's not going to come on. But what we're doing is wanting cheap
We're
food.
flipping all the switches.
We're flipping the switches because we want the cheap food, but the cheap food just tells you that you want more cheap food because the scientists absolutely know how to program our brains to go, ooh, I'm hungry again. And whereas if you're spending more money and eating the food like what you serve, you're not hungry again. You feel good. You don't got to go to the doctor. You don't have lots and lots and lots of these autoimmune diseases. I'm not saying that like nobody will have them ever, but they will. We, we've accelerated this stuff to the point it's very concerning. But pendulums sometimes have to swing really hard in one direction for people to wake up.
Well,
Um,
there's been plenty of scientists that have proven that sugar is more addictive than heroin. They've given rats both sugar and heroin, got them addicted to both, and then gave the free choice, and they choose sugar.
of course,
And
absolutely.
so myself included, my son, I would say that my oldest son is addicted to sugar, and I am like on an active pathway. Like we're doing no sugar Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday he can have a sweet thing because it's like all he wants. It's his mind is like literally he's like I have a 10-year-old strategizing for, well, if we went to the farmer's market on Tuesday, could I at least have a half a cookie from the cookie I buy for the weekend? Like he's strategizing to get sugar, and I can see it's addictive behavior. I'm like, okay, we got to make a shift here. No more sugar during the week. It's just not happening anymore.
You've got one son, don't you, Osmer, who's a carnivore?
Yeah, I have all my kids eat meat except for my daughter. Osmar got married and he's moved to New Mexico, so that's awesome.
Oh,
But
congratulations for him. That's great.
and so he's there, but um but yeah, all my kids eat meat except for my daughter Luna. And it's interesting. Yeah, they all started vegetarian, and Luna's the only one that stayed that way. Um, so I think that but I think that chefs have power. And I'm saying this because of your audience largely being in the restaurant industry, but chefs have power to shift culturally what we think is important. And
Yes.
if you go to a restaurant, I can cook food most better than most people are going to be able to cook at home, right? That's just a true thing. So when you have a grass-fed, grass-finished lamb chop from here, or you have some meat steak from here, and I disrupt that idea that grass-finished beef is too chewy, it's too tough, you can't eat it, blah, 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 whatever that story is. And they have like this extraordinary, we do this roast beef uh with leg steaks with the bone marrow chunk of the leg in the round. Like we use oso and then leg steaks to do it. And people just can't like get it. They're like, this can't be leg meat. Like it should be tough and da, 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 da. That opens their mind. I'm like, not only is it leg meat, it was grass finished right here on the farm. Then people get open minded to like, okay, maybe I could buy grass fed, grass finished. Maybe that is okay. You know what I mean? Maybe I can do that at home. And I think that when we say on our menu that we're supporting this local farm, I think that people go home and then maybe buy that at the farmer's market or order a CSA from them. I think that we are massively powerful. And right now, the missing link for regenerative agriculture for so many small farmers is the consumer buy-in. It is that we are all so addicted to the convenience of Instacart and the grocery store and all of this stuff that we're really trading that resilience for convenience. And I think that chefs have the power. And I just want to ask all of you out there that care about this and care about our children, and that we use that power to educate. We put that information on our menus. We put that in a chalkboard above the bar, whatever. Like, let's talk about what we're doing, not just because it is taste the best and like it's going to be an ego boost for us when people tell us that's the best food they've ever had, but that we do it as a way that we're also supporting those farmers, because farmers are, it's maybe the only harder industry than restaurants to make a living. It's just literally
Incredibly hard. Well, one of the things that Drew was talking about yesterday, and I'm curious about this. He said it's like we have the lowest amount of
cattle.
cattle since like the 40s or something like
Yes,
that.
yes,
Like
sir.
ranchers are
And
just selling their land and they're done because it's just too, it's just it's hard. It's too freaking hard.
well, let's do some math. Like, okay, so if you are a new rancher, that you didn't inherit the land, we'll do like a little math. I bought this place, 200 acres for 2 point something million dollars. Let's say I just bought raw land. Oh no, I think it would have, because honestly, I think maybe we could take that. I could have got it for 1.8 or something if there was no house or whatever. You're just going to graze cattle on it.
Yeah.
So you're servicing a debt. You have a mortgage that's got to be over $10,000 a month. So you need $100,000 a year just to start, not insurance, not taxes, not anything, like just to service the debt. You need $100,000 a year. Let's say you could carry 40 head of cattle. Very few places could you carry 40 head of cattle on 200 acres. It would have to be a tropical environment. You have to be doing holistic planned grazing and moving the cows every day. And you have 40 cows and they each have a baby, and you take them to the sale barn and you sell the girls for 15 and the boys for 17. So you had 40 babies. So you had less than $80,000 for your whole herd. Like, how's that math? People say, oh, well, okay, but most people inherited their land. Okay, let's say you inherited your land and my taxes are like 20 something $1,000 a year. Let's say you inherited your land, you just need insurance for a couple $1,000s a month. Your taxes is, let's say, $2,000 a month. So we're at $5,000 a month for insurance and taxes. Feed, you have to, some months of the year, you're not going to have grass, depending where you live. You have some feed costs. And so can you pay all that with 40 head of cattle with that $80,000 that you're going to get and live and pay your car payment and pay your own life insurance? Blah, blah. No, you cannot. You
Yeah.
cannot. And so let's look at, the price of cotton. You can do it with the price of corn. You can do it with anything. Nobody can come into the market. We're losing 140,000 farms in the last 10 years, and it is impossible for someone. I'm struggling so hard right now. Like, if you're out there, you want to take a vacation, or you want to do your retreat here, you want to do your wedding here, your quinceañera, please do. And we're with the restaurant, with the end user, with the selling beef boxes, selling pork boxes online. I'm still struggling with a fairly large audience, with a lot of positive press, like all of it. I'm struggling. So when we talk about this, like the numbers just don't math anymore at the current prices, at the current everything. And so people don't want to pay more for food, and I understand that. But I do think that we need to look at food like it is a national security issue. I think we need to look at local food like it's a national security issue. We don't have enough meat in this country. We're a net importer of meat. We're a net importer of food. We are outsourcing our food to the cheapest hourly wage everywhere across the world. We in America used to grow all different kinds of stuff. And we have diverse climates. We have subtropical and tropical and temperate climates and all these different climates that we can grow all different kinds of food. But we have gone to the lowest common denominator of, we'll let California grow vegetables and a little bit in the south of Texas, and then everybody else is going to grow corn, soy, cotton, maybe some sweet potatoes, maybe some watermelons, a few other things. But essentially, we have just narrowed what we grow so drastically that we're not food sovereign, and And that is a national security issue. And so it can't just be about the cost of food. It can't just be about, we really have to have a rethinking of the whole system and what is important to us. And we really have to get bureaucracy out of the way. The government has to get out of the way and let farmers innovate. Let us live in community. Let us have whatever housing we need for farm workers. Like it can't be, you can only have one farm worker dwelling for every 40 acres in agriculture. Oh, you have 4 RVs on your property. We now want you to comply with codes for an RV park. Like just stop it. Just stop and let farmers innovate because we're navigating very hard times where the cost of goods that we have to input have gone way up and what people are paying us has not gone up. And we need to be able to innovate. If that means living with people on the ranch and they get room and board because that's part of the pay structure that works for them, let them do it. Get out of the way. And then the banking system, which prints money nonstop all the time, needs to come up with a product. If we're going to be printing money all the time, we should be having a product for food sovereignty. We have 3% down loans and 0% down loans for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and veterans and all types of things. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have that. Homeownership's important. But I'm saying, why is there not any kind of loan with a low down payment to get onto land? Why is that not a thing? Why do we not have the banking product? Because they want the land to be controlled by the major corporations, or they want it into land development to put us all into areas and keep us out of nature. And my book is declaring that we need to be engaged in nature. It's our natural way of being. And I want us to all do that. And I think that I want to leave you guys with one thing, is like the green revolution, not the agricultural one, but like the sustainable revolution had an underlying message that we don't belong here, that we're a pestilence on the planet, that we are a problem. And I just want to say we are not. We're part of the design. We're part of nature. We cannot just separate from it, go into sterile rooms in cities and just leave it alone. We are actually meant to be engaged with nature. We are a keystone species that is meant to engage. And so you are not a pestilence on the planet. You deserve to live. And only a species that's been told they're such a problem that they're ruining everything would allow ourselves to be literally sterilized by agrochemicals and the food that we're eating. And as we all scream about reproductive rights out there, I want us to consider the reproductive rights of our children, the right for them to be able to reproduce. If the average sperm count of a man is going to be 0 by 2040, ask yourself, do your sons deserve the right to reproduce? I believe they do. And so we have to rethink everything.
Wow. Boy, that's a topic we get go. Oh my gosh. I love this. I love that you are so willing to be bold and outspoken. I've got to imagine you have had your share of hate, anger, you're a traitor. You have to have experienced tons of that, especially for
Oh, you
somebody.
can Google Molly Engelhart changed her restaurant to meat. When I turned my restaurants from vegan to meat, I mean, the level, I mean, but here's what I see is that they had already lost the battle. All they could say was how fat I was, how ugly I was, how I wasn't aging well, and it's probably because I was secretly eating meat and dairy. And I assert I'm 47 years old breastfeeding a 2-year-old that I had when I was 45 and a half. Like I actually assert you have no idea what my health is. Like and yes, I did just recently lose like 40 pounds. And it did get sprung by, I didn't love everybody calling me morbidly obese online. But I felt really healthy. I was on the farm every day. I'm moving things. I'm lifting. I'm strong. And so I'm lifting babies. I did have 4 babies back to back between 37 and 45. So yes, I did gain weight with each baby. That is a true story. But they had already lost the battle to have any meaningful conversation with me or argue when all they could talk about is how fat I was, how old I was, how ugly I was, and that I was colonizing my husband. That was the big, like, that I'm racist and I had all these Mexican children to cover up for my racism. And I'm like, I honestly, at a certain point, I couldn't even, they were talking about the colonial diet. And my husband got on and like in Spanish to this one guy. And he was like, I'm unclear, when was soy protein curls in your indigenous diet? And my husband is like legit indigenous, like grew up in Oaxaca, in Juan Malula, Santa Maria, which did not have a road to the outside world until 1991, when the Hyatt Corporation felt a need to get access to gasoline, and it went through that area. But other than that, like they bought the beaches from other indigenous tribes to build the Hyatt hotels, and then they needed access to oil, and so a road went through there. But until 1991, there was no road to my husband's village. And so for somebody to be telling my husband about a colonial diet, or that like his restaurant was somehow, or that I colonized him, or like whatever, my husband's like, these guys are just don't have enough problems. Like I grew up with not enough food, like eating just tortillas and lard for months of the year when the dried fish and the this ran out, or like hunting and eating honey badgers or whatever. And he's like, and this guy is like eating soy curls and sells them in some BART station restaurant that he claims is a vegan restaurant. And he's like, he doesn't have, like, he's speaking for indigenous folks. He's like, this guy is like telling, oh, because my husband rides a horse. He's like riding the transportation of the colonizer. My husband's like, there was literally no road to my village. Like I was raised riding horses. This is how we got to the farm. My husband's father never drove a car, only rode a horse. And so like it's just like so backwards. But I really knew that they had lost the battle before they started, because the things they were wanting to argue about didn't make any sense. Like if your biggest argument for me serving meat is like you're racist because you have Mexican children, like you're just the dots you're trying to connect. We've moved the bar so far out on what racism is. Apparently now you can marry someone, have four children, and you're just doing that to cover up your own hatred. Like that doesn't make any kind of normal person sense.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but yes, they came at me. They wished for my children to die a slow, terrible death. Said, all the terrible things. Um, and the thing is, the truth cuts through everything else like a knife. And so, why their reaction was so visceral to what I was saying is because I was the crown jewel of my family, Cafe Gratitude, Gracias Madre, and Sage Vegan Bistro. I mean, this is the crown jewel of sit down restaurants in. And to be clear, I'm not associated or affiliated and don't speak for Cafe Gratitude or Gracias Madre, and nothing I'm saying here is speaking for them, and they are still operating, and I don't want to say, but like that someone defected that was so deeply in the cult and told the truth.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, death is not a failure. It's a function of life.
Yeah.
It is the other side of life. And yes, are all of us programmed to live? Yes. Are we all programmed to do our best to live? Yes. But this idea that we could just say something and then start eating something different and nothing will die is a complete illusion. And that I very articulately, over and over again, on many different podcasts and many different outlets, spoke to that illusion and said it is not true. They could not let that stand because it is literally.
Oh, hey, Molly.
My identity was attached to it. My income was attached to it. My accolades in the world was everything I was attached to it. Like Molly Engelhart, vegan chef, chef Molly, vegan chef Molly. I mean, everything I was, I had to shed an entire identity to accept this truth. And so when people said I did it for the money, it was like, didn't make any sense. I lost so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would rather have less and be telling the truth.
I saw, first of all, do you like, I can't believe you haven't been on Joe Rogan's podcast yet. Like,
From your ears to his mouth, please, Lord. I'm trying to get on there. Like I don't know what I got to do for him to hear me, see me. I'm out there. I want
I
to be
mean,
a
we got to
podcast.
get you on Joe Rogan's podcast. I'm going to take that as like a personal, like, challenge to try to figure out like anybody I know or any kind. It's got you have to. I
I
mean, he has
I
people like he
just
has the
emailed
dude on.
Callie Memes and asked her if I mean Casey Memes and asked her if she would reach out to Tucker and give Tucker my book because I think that Tucker would resonate with my book.
Oh, for sure.
And so
Absolutely.
I just made that request of her. And my brother was CC'd on the email and he wrote, and Candace and Joe Rogan would be nice as well, since she did all of them after her book came out. But she's like laying low till her confirmation and she's having a baby right now. So, um,
Well, he is. Casey is. I remember I actually heard her on. First time I heard Casey Means, I believe it was on Barry Weiss's podcast. Honestly, was the first time I heard her, and I was like, oh my God. I sent that to everybody. Of course, now she's, I mean, she's huge, and has gotten all the recognition she deserves. What's the dude down in Georgia that's been on there like once or twice that does regenerative
Will
power?
Harris. So he's coming to My Food is Medicine. Oh, let me talk about this really quick. And then I have to
Yeah.
go, I have to be
Okay.
somewhere. But Food is Medicine, I don't know when this is coming out, but the last week of weekend in September, 25, 26, 27, 28, or 26, 27, 28, we're having a Food is Medicine conference. It's going to be Will Harris from Bluffton, Georgia. We're going to have Courtney Swan from the Real Foodology podcast. We're having Logan Duvall, who healed his son of stage 4 cancer with local food. He has the Sowing Prosperity podcast. We're having the Meat Mafia guys from Austin and with their podcast and their story of being so sick and healing themselves with a carnivore diet. We're having formerly Raw Vada, now Yovada, was a vegan influencer who couldn't get pregnant and had to give up the vegan diet and now has this beautiful family. All these stories of transformation around food, people who have healed cancer and diabetes. And then in between that, we're doing butchering workshops, sourdough workshops, fermented hot sauce workshops, all these different kinds of tincture making. We're going to do some different tinctures and bitters making, all different workshops in between. And it's the release of my book. So the Saturday night, we're going to have a book release party, but Will Harris is going to be there. And you can use the code Molly10. You can go to sovereigntyranch.com or foodismedicinesummit.com and buy tickets and use Molly10 to get a discount. And it's a weekend. You can stay on the ranch. You can stay in the Best Western in town. Either way, we'd love to have you come out and
I'm
meet.
coming. When is it?
It's the last weekend of September. Food is medicine. Uh, it's the 26, 27, 28. There's going to be all different stuff happening. Butchers, the woman who started Fond Bone Broth, which is the first or regenerative organic bone broth company, started at the farmer's market. Like, little tiny thing is now a big thing. All different people. And then we're having all these people in the, what is it called? The Maha space that are doing advocacy or lobbying on our behalf, on humanity's behalf. So what is Erin's last name? She got the Food is Medicine bill passed in Oklahoma. Grace from the Maha Girls that got the food system changed in her high school. And now she's like 19 and in the Maha Coalition. And also Kelly Ryerson, Glyphosate Girl. They're going to do a conference on how to lobby, how to, because we are getting traction on certain things. Like we are pressing up against the big corporations by getting engagement from these mothers, from these people that care. So we're going to be looking at this from like, how can you bring these holistic practices into your life or into your restaurant? How can you lobby on the behalf of humanity against the chemical companies? And then what are these inspiring stories of people healing themselves with food? And those are, and so yes, everybody from Will Harris, Misha Tate, she's a UFC fighter. Someone just sent me a DM and said, you know what wasn't on my bingo card for 2025? Will Harris and Misha Tate speaking at the same conference. And I was like, yay for that.
I want to come to this, and maybe I'll I have some podcast equipment. Maybe I could set up interview some folks
Yeah,
while they're.
this is my podcast studio, but you could just set up like what on the other side where my equipment is, or even just move my equipment to the side and use my room and set up. But I'm gonna probably need to record a few things while we're here, but you're welcome to this room.
Foodismedicine.com.
I think it's foodismedicinesummit.com, or you can go to
Foodismedicine.
sovereigntyranch.com, or you go to my Instagram. It's in my handle. I mean my
What's your handle on Instagram? Tell everybody real
talk
quick.
to Molly.
Talk to Molly.
Yes.
All right, I will get this posted soon, by next week, and
Okay, email me if you can't find the links for Food is Medicine, and I'll
I
send
will.
uh and yeah, 10% off if you use my code. And we would love to have everybody out. And yeah, for sure, come out and you could get a bunch of podcasts while you're here. You could even start reaching out to people in advance to schedule it. We also could set up, the kids have a little schoolhouse that has air conditioning and everything too. So we could set up multiple places for people to do podcasts that are out of the way.
That'd be freaking awesome. I would love it because I believe in what you're doing very much, and I think our audience, this is inspiring and educational for people that own and run restaurants all over. So thank you, Molly. I know you got to go. This is freaking awesome. Love it. Love
Thank you
it.
so much for having me back on. I appreciate you.
All right, see ya.
Okay, bye bye.